talking about our AI fundamentals, prompting, and the ways that you can improve prompting to get better results. We have lots of tips and tricks for you today, and we're going to make this as interactive as possible. Before we go anywhere, we do need to talk about safety. We want you to be aware that when it comes to AI, it's important to note that using non-approved AI web services can risk exposing personal or confidential data to the public. The good news is that Copilot is built on our work credentials, and as long as you're signed in, it can ensure data integrity that applies across the same enterprise grade data protection that you're already using with your other Microsoft applications. So when information's already protected in our emails and messages, we can use Copilot and know that this information is protected in the same way. Many AI tools online do not protect your company's data, so using Copilot with your work information allows you to have those built-in data protections that apply immediately so that your data stays inside your organization's tenant and is not used to train AI models. Before we dig deeper, let's help you figure out which environment you're likely in. We did set this up for education specific organizations, but if your organization is something like retail, healthcare, finance, education, private sector, you're most likely part of this enterprise commercial cloud. For government agencies or contractors, there will be some differences in feature availability due to specific security requirements. Today, we're focusing specifically on the education within the enterprise experience. Copilot in this environment is existing Microsoft 365 trust boundary, the same boundary that already protects your files, emails, chats, and SharePoint sites. So Copilot isn't a separate mystery system. It's layered on top of the security and compliance controls your organization already has in place. In the commercial enterprise cloud, Microsoft operates secure data centers around the world. Your organization chooses where it's hosted, for example, North America, Europe, or another region. And the key takeaway is Copilot honors the same data residency decisions your tenant already follows. It doesn't suddenly move your content to some other random location. It stays within Microsoft 365's environment for your IT team to already work with. Next, you'll notice some compliance alphabet soup, so ISO 27001, SOC, and GDPR. These are widely recognized independent security and privacy standards. Microsoft 365 and therefore Copilot is built to meet these requirements. That means things like strong information security management controls, independent audit controls through SOC reports, and alignment with GDPR organizations that have to manage EU personal data. You don't have to remember each acronym. The important part is that Copilot isn't operating off to the side. It inherits the same enterprise gate compliance posture as the rest of Microsoft 365. The third point here is encryption in transit and at rest. Anytime Copilot is accessing your organization's content, whether that's a Word document, a Teams chat, or SharePoint file, that document is encrypted while it's moving between services and while it's stored on disk. So, your prompts, the context Copilot looks at, the responses it generates are all being protected using the same encryption that already secures your emails and files today. I'd love to know, how do you typically prompt with AI? Feel free to throw in the chat what your experience with prompts is. You might feel that I'm not sure what a prompt is. I make my own prompts from scratch. I usually use the suggested prompts that pop up with Copilot. I use the suggested prompts and my own, a mix of the two. And I know how to craft prompts like a pro in all forms, suggested and my own. Feel free to share your experience in the chat. Love to know where you feel you fall on the range there. I'm seeing some fours, which is great. I love to use a mix of both myself. So understanding AI prompts is all about, a prompt is just simply a set of instructions given to an AI to guide its response. It's like giving instructions to a helpful assistant. The clearer and more specific your prompt is, the better the AI can understand and respond with useful information. AI models function as advanced predictive text, aiming to generate the most likely continuation based on your input. Clear, detailed prompts yield better results. For example, a simple summarize this article versus a specific context-rich prompt produces markedly different outputs, which if you're combining the option of a suggested prompt with your own instructions, you're likely seeing that you're getting better results than going with a generic prompt. So why does prompting matter? AI isn't magic and it definitely cannot read our minds. If we give it short, vague prompts, it fills in the blanks on its own. Sometimes that works, but most of the time it's not so great. These 5 prompting skills help you give what AI needs so that your results come out closer to what you actually want. We'll introduce the core principles of effective prompting, but you can think of them as what to do before you start writing. Effective prompting starts with clarity. Be specific in your instructions, provide context by sharing relevant background information so AI understands your goals, and set constraints to define boundaries and desired format. Iteration is key. Refine prompts based on results and use a think it through approach by asking AI to explain its reasoning step by step. Understanding AI's limitations. AI models can produce what are called hallucinations, where they generate fabricated or incorrect information but present it as facts. Unlike search engines, AI language models do not retrieve verified data but use pattern matching to generate responses. It's important to critically evaluate AI outputs as they may sound convincing yet be inaccurate. A practical fact-checking framework for AI-generated content involves 3 steps. First, identify the source and credibility of the information presented. Next, cross-reference the claims with trusted independent references. Finally, analyze for context and potential bias to ensure balanced and accurate evaluation. If the AI cites a safety standard like ISO 27001, verify it against official documentation. When it comes to checking source credibility, what you can do is review whether the AI cited credible official sources by looking at the references to government websites, internal policy documents, or recognized industry standards. Tell it to go to a specific group of sites, such as .gov sites. Confirm that the source is current and relevant to the topic at hand. For example, if AI says HIPAA requires encryption of all patient data, check whether it actually does, and tell Copilot to verify that against a recommended source. You also want to validate factual accuracy by manually verifying key facts and figures. You can cross-check dates, statistics, and definitions against trusted sources and use internal documentation or external regulatory sites. For example, if AI claims the ADA was updated in 2023 to include remote work accommodations, confirm this by reviewing the ADA site or your HR compliance updates. When it comes to step-by-step prompt examples, start with a compliance-focused prompt. For example, verify this response against the latest HIPAA guidelines. Attach a document if you have one available. When it comes to using authoritative sources, you can tell Copilot to reference a cdc.gov when discussing public health protocols, for example. You can also encourage citation of internal documents by telling Copilot to include the link to our internal data privacy policy when summarizing user data handling. Of course, the AI must have access to this information, which means you must also have access to this information. And typically, we do have access to internal policies. Before finalizing information, always cross-check the facts. You can tell Copilot that it needs to compare this with the latest version of the employee handbook. And then you can review and validate the outputs manually. And you can also tell Copilot after AI generates a summary of GDPR rules, a compliance officer should review this for accuracy. But let's go ahead and try out some prompts together. I have a demo account here that I can use to showcase how Copilot works in action. If you're able to follow along with me, go right ahead. At this point, I've gone to my home screen for Microsoft 365. So the URL is up here at the top of your screen. You can go to m365.cloud.microsoft. And when you're logged in with your work credentials, you'll see your name down here in the bottom left-hand corner. You'll see that it starts me out on the new chat screen. And I also see that I've got that enterprise data protection applying to my chat automatically, tied to my work account. You can also access Copilot from your web-based browsers very easily using this method. Right off the bat, Copilot provides us with some handy suggestions here on the home screen, and they've recently updated the way these are appearing. Instead of seeing the full prompt, I'm seeing some little shortcuts here, but if I click on this menu, it's going to open up my Copilot prompt gallery, where you can see lots of great conversation starters to get started with Copilot. But for today, I'd love to do an icebreaker prompt or a get started prompt with you. And for this, I'd love it if you could enter any word into the chat. Just one word, but any word. The weirder, the more obscure, the more random, the better. This kind of reminds the Whose Line Is It Anyway, where we're doing prompt improv today. So feel free to throw some examples in the chat there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use your word in my prompt, and we're going to see what Copilot can do. I absolutely love this prompt example here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Copilot to explain AI by comparing it to cat, which I grabbed from the chat. Thank you for that suggestion. We're going to make the analogy clear and easy to follow, and with a short factual explanation. And we're asking it to include citations with links to public sources. Now, this is kind of a silly prompt where these citations might not mean a lot to us in this particular example, but by adding this simple tag to your standard prompts, you're going to ensure that you're getting information. And of course, you can adjust it to maybe internal sources or a specific file you attach. Let's see what Copilot can do with this particular example. We'll give it a moment to think here and process. It came back pretty quick. It's going to go ahead and explain AI by comparing it to a cat. And they're talking about how a cat learns from experience, figuring out where food is, which furniture to climb on, and how to navigate a room. And then it's going to go ahead and tell me how AI learns in a similar way. Instead of instincts and experience, it's using data and algorithms to improve its performance over time. Little bit of a stretch there, but I love that it was wholeheartedly going into this particular example and response for me. I do want to point out that it did cite public resources in here. You can see that I've got IBM, I've got Wikipedia. Again, in this particular case, some of these prompts or some of these citations are going to be a little bit more verifiable. Maybe the National Geographic is an expert on cat behavior, but then when it comes to AI systems, Microsoft might be a better citation for this particular bullet item. We can also see that there are contextual recommendations to help continuing our conversation down here at the bottom. So we can see how Copilot's going to ask us if we want to create a visual version of the cat analogy or explain some differences between these two items and what are the limitations of narrow AI. You can also see down here at the bottom, I've got a full list of my citations that I can scroll through and find all of those in a nice condensed list instead of inline citations. I also have lots of great options to follow up here as well. All right. Thank you for participating in our fun icebreaker demo. You can see that Copilot is going to help you when it comes to quick responses, even the silly ones. You can use that information to then generate new content here on potentially random items and then pull in public sources and be able to validate that information. This really, obviously, before I shared it with anybody, would need extensive review and framing, I would expect, before anybody would understand why I'm sharing this information with them. But Copilot's jumpstarting that process and helping me go through that prompt exercise. Let's head back to the deck and talk more about how the context of our prompts is going to frame our responses. This all comes from context engineering. You can think of this as extreme prompt engineering, and it means giving AI the right background so it can do a good job. AI doesn't know your style, your goals, or your situation unless you tell it. When you give it a clear context, it's like handing a coworker everything they need instead of expecting them to guess. For example, how often have you passed off a topic to a colleague or a task off to assistant and told them to do it on their own, asking any questions of you in the process? Likely never. Usually you hand them over the task and you say, let me know if you have any questions. And we need to do the same thing with Copilot. This is going to avoid generic answers and help AI sound more like you. This technique is highlighted as a foundational skill in the file because it fixes that AI should know what I mean problem, which until we tell it, it doesn't. So AI's not a mind reading tool. It cannot infer implicit expectations, explicitly providing context, make sure that AI has all the necessary data to produce that relevant and accurate output. This is a similar approach to human collaboration. Again, there's a back and forth, there's a collaboration rather than a magical black box. AI is also going to be very helpful. By providing clear instructions, you're going to guide AI's inherent training to be helpful towards producing genuinely useful and tailored results rather than generic or agreeable but inaccurate responses. So, how do we bring all this together? While we can make requests, revisit, and readjust our prompts in the following conversation, as we've observed earlier, we're also just trying to be effective and simply get things done. So, what does an efficient prompt look like? What parts are present? Well, it starts with the person. Aligning Copilot to you or to the role relative to the prompt allows Copilot to gain an understanding regarding its perspective on the topic or intended output. So, give it the POV. Give it a task. Let Copilot know what we're intending to accomplish or what goal we're seeking. Inform Copilot of the format or the medium within the context that it should be using. So any details regarding the format and output that you're looking for. Audience. Copilot is assisting us with relaying details, communicating or instructing an audience. Knowing the audience will guide Copilot to the best possible output. Lastly, our tone. Our message or content may not resonate with our audience as intended if we're not mindful of how we're saying what we're saying. Let Copilot know regarding the tone and the output based on the situation or context. These elements combined will create a single prompt for Copilot that has that detailed blueprint for an optimal output. And we can discover an opportunity to adjust or seek additional details as we move forward through the conversation. We also want to remember GCSE. Essentially, the goal is the prompt where we're telling Copilot where to start, what we're hoping to achieve, glean, or discover. Context lets Copilot know the details about the goal and the audience for which the output is intended. Source, this can include reference content or specific content from which Copilot will source an understanding of the topic and related details. And lastly, expectation. What will we need Copilot to do for us, including the format and tone of the output? Similarly, with those first prompting frameworks in mind, here's how you can put it all together. This is a nice little Mad Lib style example. So you can swap out all of the details to get all types of different responses out of Copilot, the elements don't necessarily even need to be in this order. But by giving Copilot all of these parts in your prompt, you're going to formulate an organized and complete prompting process. You're going to get a better result on the first shot. So telling it to think like a specific person or persona, create a specific item, or complete a specific task, format that output in a specific format to be read by a specific audience, and then use a specific tone or style. So where do we begin? We're responsible to initiate the conversation with Copilot, but Copilot is eagerly waiting for our engagement. And when it comes to some of these examples, some are going to be better suited when we initiate the conversation, and others are perhaps more relevant once the conversation is underway. So, just to talk about some of these prompting approaches, you'll pick an approach and you're often already doing these without even knowing you're doing them. But a zero shot prompt is when I provide AI with one prompt and I expect a perfect response the first time. Providing Copilot with some examples in that same prompt. So maybe I give it an example and tell it to recreate this in a new style or a new format. Copilot has a template to follow and a prompt or task that I'm giving it. This is a one-shot approach. Few shot is when I'm going to iterate a couple times with Copilot. I'm going to respond and ask for something different in my response, or a slightly changed or slightly deeper or going a little further. That's going to be my few shot. When it comes to the role-based example, this is when we're assigning Copilot that specific persona and we're telling it based on this role in this organization, in this light, what kinds of things should I be doing for this prompt or that prompt? So assigning Copilot that specific persona is going to give you a role-based example. Chain of thought is when we ask AI to detail its thought process step by step. So I ask it to go through and highlight key trends. Tell me how you're identifying these trends. Walk me through your step process because it may go awry throughout its step process based on how I would do it. And by seeing it all brought out into my response allows me to better direct Copilot to the right response. And of course, there are more prompting approaches that we're going to explore today in our demo. I'm not going to go through all of them right now. And again, you're definitely doing some of these already just in the natural way that you converse with Copilot. And there's definitely no right or wrong approach to take. And depending on your situation or objective, we're going to find some that are better suited to achieve our intended outcome. But let's explore a couple of these ideas in more detail to understand why they're so effective. When it comes to that chain of thought prompting, you can ask AI to explain its reasoning or steps before providing a final answer. This doesn't mean the AI is thinking like a human, but it does mean it writes out its reasoning in words. Seeing these steps help you understand how the answer was created and lets you catch mistakes earlier. It also improves the final response because the AI takes a more careful step-by-step approach instead of jumping to a quick guess. This is especially useful for complicated or high stakes work. By explaining its reasoning first, the AI is forced to bake that reasoning into the final answer, which usually makes the output clearer, more accurate, and more usable. Leveraging AI's predictive nature allows us to use large language models to generate responses by predicting the next word when you ask it for a thought process first. The AI integrates that reasoning into its subsequent word predictions for the actual answer. This forces AI to can take additional considerations about the task into its response, leading to that more coherent, thoughtful, and accurate output. It also enhances transparency and helps with debugging to turn that mystical magic of AI output into a transparent process, allowing you to understand the AI's assumptions and evaluate its reasoning alongside its answer. With few shot prompting, we have the ability you have AI work by predicting the next most likely word, not only understanding your goal or reading your mind. Because of this, AI is very good at copying patterns like writing style and tone. When you give the AI clear examples of that style, those examples become the strongest guide. It gives them shape to respond, so it looks more like what you want. If you don't give examples or clear instructions, the AI falls back on general patterns it learned during training. That's why the output can sound generic or miss the mark. The more context and examples you provide, the better the results will be. Instead of saying by friendly or be concise, you should ask it what it looks like. Also consider giving a bad example so AI knows what to avoid. This helps your results come out more consistent with your voice. And why this works is it helps us leverage imitation. AI excels at pattern recognition and imitation. Providing a good example directly shows AI the precise style, tone, and format you want, overriding its default average intuition. It also reduces ambiguity, and adjectives alone are subjective. So, concrete examples provide unambiguous guidance for AI, ensuring the output matches your specific vision. It also guides bad behavior avoidance, including that bad example, what not to do, especially those crafted by the AI itself, helps it understand what to avoid, further refining the output quality. Reverse prompting fixes one of AI's biggest problems. It doesn't naturally ask clarifying questions. The AI is designed to be helpful, so instead of stopping to ask for missing information, it often fills in the gaps on its own. When we tell the AI to ask questions before getting started, we change the dynamic. The AI shifts from acting like a tool to acting like a teammate. This helps prevent wrong numbers, missing details, or made up information. Think of the natural state of AI as an eager intern or eager student. Often they would rather guess than bother you with questions. If the AI didn't ask you for key details, assume it made them up. So why this works? It overcomes AI eager intern tendency. AI is predispos- predisposition to say yes and avoid troubling users with questions. So giving it permission to ask questions empowers it to seek necessary clarification, preventing it from making numbers up or inserting placeholder text. I love to say, ask me what you need before you begin. This allows Copilot to respond with questions. It also fosters a teammate dynamic. This technique shifts the interaction from command response model to a collaborative teammate technology paradigm, mirroring that effective human management where a manager encourages a junior employee to ask questions. It also ensures data accuracy. By prompting the AI to request specific data points, you ensure the output is based on accurate user provided information rather than AI generated assumptions. Assigning a role helps AI pull from the right part of its huge knowledge base. When you say you're a communications expert or you're a teacher explaining this to beginners, the AI focuses on the style and knowledge of that role. This keeps your answers more accurate, clear, and relevant. This can be one of the most foundational techniques to use because it tells AI where to focus its vast knowledge. This helps activate the relevant knowledge subsets. Each role, such as a molecular biologist, triggers deep associations with knowledge on the internet and allows the AI to draw on specific relevant information within its vast data set. Again, matches and finds patterns. So by giving it an anchor, you're giving it a place to start. It applies constrained thinking. By adopting a role, the AI is forced to apply the principles, mindset, or constraints associated with that role. This collision of different information sources fosters more creative and tailored outputs. It also enhances output specificity. Instead of a generic response, assigning a role ensures AI's output is filtered through a particular lens, leading to a more nuanced and expert-like answers. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at some prompting approaches in action. Going back into my demo account here, I'm going to start a new chat up here at the top of the screen. We're no longer talking about cats and AI. We're now going to take a look at how you can provide AI with specific prompts to get better results. So this first example I'm actually going to do here where I'm going to have Copilot help me draft an email. And I can go into Outlook to supply this prompt as well, but I'm going to start here from Copilot chat. So if I want Copilot to help me draft up an email, I can give it a prompt and I want to tell it if I'm going to do that zero shot approach, that I'm focusing in on giving it a task, no details regarding objectives, audience, or voice of delivery. This model relies on the vast training data that Copilot already has to infer its objectives. So my prompt is going to be provide the AI a task without any prior examples. Oh, there we go. That's actually the wrong prompt there. Bear with me. Getting the wrong thing in there. We're trying this to have Copilot draft an email to the team announcing a new project management tool, Microsoft Planner, that will be implemented next month. Highlight the benefits of the tool, provide a brief overview of the training sessions that will be available. This is a demonstration of the zero shot prompt because we're telling Copilot in one single prompt all of the details it needs to draft the email to our specifications. We're not giving it any prior examples, no details regarding objectives, no audience, no voice of delivery. The model relies on its vast training to infer what it's going to complete here. So we'll give Copilot a moment to respond here. And it's provided this polished draft that I can send directly to my team, giving me a layout of an email, and then also pulling in its information based upon my prompt. So this is a good zero shot prompt where we're able to tell Copilot everything that we want it to do in one attempt. Now we could take this a little bit further and go with the one shot approach where we give Copilot some more information. So for this example, I am going to go on into my Outlook and we're going to pull up an email and have Copilot use an email for its response. This again gives Copilot an example to infer during its task and apply a learned pattern to new similar inputs. So I'm going to come in and find my example prompt here, or my example email. Nope, not that one, this one. Oh, bear with me. Some of these emails are not so great. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to ask Copilot here, based on this email, to give me a specific email that then helps me provide an example to my audience. So we'll just go ahead and click Start Prompting. And so I can have Copilot summarize and reply to this email. I could also attach an example of how I've responded to this email in the past. And that can give Copilot that frame of reference. If we're going to do a one-shot prompt, we can tell it exactly what to do. I can also just copy that content directly into my prompt. So for example, I have a long prompt here that I've put together. This is where I'm going to have Copilot draft an email to my team announcing that new project management tool. So the same prompt I had before, this time I'm giving it an example, and the example has a subject of what I want it to include in the subject, what I want it to include in the header, what I want it to include in the body of the message, and then it's also got placeholders in here, and I can come in and populate those placeholders after it generates my message. This is going to allow Copilot to generate this information here into my specific example. So this is a one-shot, a prompt approach where I'm not only giving Copilot a task, I'm giving it this example. In another way of doing this, you could do multiple examples or few shots, what to look for in different examples. You can also continue to iterate if it doesn't hit the mark with your example. But here it's gone ahead and polished an email announcement, and it's using my exact format because I told it I needed to have some information for the subject, header, and body. And then what it put into the body is going to be based upon my prompt and my example. You can see that there are still some placeholders in here where I can come in and refine this message before sending it with my own specific elements. But this has been prompted and ready to go. So what I'm doing with these different prompting approaches is I'm considering my situation. First of all, where am I? Am I working on an email? Let's go ahead and open Copilot here in Outlook and start prompting here. Do I have an example to give it of what to do? Do I have reference materials that I can attach here? Is there some specifics that I can provide? This is all going to drive Copilot through that process and give me that richer response on the first try. Let's try another example. I'm going to go back into my Copilot browser here. We're going to start the new chat screen. And this time we're going to take a look at how you can use meta prompting. Meta prompting is the practice of writing a prompt that will help you generate better prompts. So we'll start out with a very simple prompt to give me 5 prompt ideas to help me summarize long documents more effectively. What is a good way to ask AI to help me prepare for a performance review? Both of these examples are going to provide Copilot with 2 different areas where it can help me with working through these different examples. And Copilot is going to go ahead and give me ways to respond to it. So not only is it going to give me prompting ideas and suggestions for prompts, down here it's going to tell me how this is going to help. So if you keep scrolling down, you can see that it's going to tell you, I can help draft a performance review narrative right now. Just tell me your role and the main things you worked on. You can also ask for some sample responses to tough questions or create a bullet point list. So you can continue with prompting to help generate for future prompts. So I can say, yes, you've given me my examples, but let's go ahead and keep going with some of these suggestions. I can, of course, write these on my own. Maybe I want to combine 2 or 3 suggestions and have Copilot respond in multiple ways. But here, Copilot is going to go ahead and take that conversation and continue to run with it. The other approach I want to take a look at is going to be the chain of thought, where you ask AI to detail its thought process step by step. This approach allows you to ask AI to give you its thought process. You can evaluate that as how you would instruct somebody to go through this thought process. The technique involves breaking down the problem into smaller, manageable steps and then reasoning through each step logically. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask Copilot to analyze the attached financial information performance of our company for the past 5 years, analyzing in the following steps. Calculating this information is going to help Copilot to pull in the examples that I'm looking for so that I can have Copilot help me get to the result I'm looking for. So let's go ahead and make sure Copilot has that financial results. You can drag and drop from a screen if you have an attachment you'd like to attach. In this case, my financial performance details are in this file. You can also use the plus icon, or you can use the slash icon inside of your prompts to pull in additional files. And again, uploading from your device will make sure that Copilot has an access to this file on your OneDrive. But now Copilot is able to take a file and analyze it following these steps. This approach allows me to tell Copilot exactly what steps I want it to take, but I can also evaluate it at each step, making sure it's taking the right turns, making the right assumptions, and following the process. So to stay aligned with your request, I've treated this as a year as the comparative period. You can see here it's now breaking down the analysis into that total revenue and year over year comparison. I'll scroll down, and then it gets into total expenses. and then it's getting into the net profit year-over-year comparison. And then I can evaluate each step. If there's a piece where we go awry, where there's something here where it didn't go beyond 2023, it should also be telling me what's happening in 2024. I can jump into a particular segment of my response and work with Copilot around that item. Instead of getting one overall financial results at the end, I can see each step and work through this thought process in more detail. The other prompting approach I'd like to take a look at is going to be the self-critique. This is really helpful because it helps prompt Copilot to encourage reflection, identify its own weaknesses, and improve its own output quality. Ask it to be its own devil's advocate. So for this particular prompt, I'm just going to grab a previous example here where I was asking Copilot to tell me about increasing participation in classroom discussions. It's given me both common and unconventional ideas. But now, after getting this response from Copilot, I'm going to enter in this self-critique prompt where I'm asking Copilot to critique itself. What evidence supports your claims, and is it sufficient for my request? So Copilot is going to think through, well, geez, why did I answer what I answered? So it'll go ahead and then generate this evidence-based evaluation of its earlier claims and focus on which strategy is supported by research and whether that evidence is sufficient. Another way that you could do this is you could ask Copilot, if this response were challenged, how would you defend or revise it? So ask it to itself on whether it's accurate or whether it's well grounded and where its research may lie. So again, this is a self-critique example where you can ask Copilot to check itself. The other example I have for you today, and my last one, is going to be the role-based example, where we instruct the AI to assume a specific persona or professional identity to shape its tone, style, and content around the context of that role. So we're going to tell Copilot to act like it's a news reporter and it's covering a live event. Write a short article reporting on the introduction of the new technology at a major organization, make it engaging and accessible. We're also going to have it include what was announced, one quote that you may create a realistic placeholder quote for, and then why this announcement is noteworthy. And we're going to keep it brief and audience friendly. So here Copilot is assigning itself to that role, and it's finding examples from the world to find, okay, this is where I can go to find information about news reporters covering live events when there's an introduction of new technology at a major organization. And it's going to go ahead and pull those examples together in its particular response, giving me a nice, concise news update here, short article reporting on the introduction. So great example of how you can have Copilot assume a role and then complete its prompt from that specific example. But let's head back to the deck. I do have a couple of aspects I want to wrap up with and invite you to play along in this next exercise. So let's examine some poorly written prompts and see how we can make them more effective with the techniques we've covered so far today. Feel free to share your ideas in the chat for these next couple of slides. It's meant to be a fun exercise. So let's assume our prompt is to create a syllabus using this document. We could give it a syllabus from last year, or we could give it an outline, but this isn't very good. What's one thing you could add to improve this prompt? Feel free to put your ideas in the chat. What's something you could add to give Copilot a little more context if it's going to create a syllabus? Feel free to enter your ideas in the chat. Just so you can see here, I'm thinking this prompt does have a task. It's a little vague. It's a syllabus, which could mean a lot of different things. There could be a lot of aspects to it, or it could be very high level. The source could vary. If we're giving it last year's syllabus, that could give it a lot more context, but what's different from last year to this year? Copilot's not going to necessarily know. Of course, If we added some specific information to our prompt, maybe what's the subject of this syllabus? What's the length requirement? What's different about this syllabus compared to previous syllabuses? Or maybe we're using an outline and we're then going to create a syllabus from that. Well, how's it going to look? What's the format going to be like? So if we add in a persona, a format, an audience, a tone, and a context, it's going to give us more of a better response. It's not going to be so vague or generalized. So if I were to take this same exact prompt and rewrite it to get better results, this might be a way I would do that. Create a syllabus using the attached document for a more advanced audience. Include a brief course description, learning objectives, a week-by-week topic outline, and one suggested activity per week. Format the syllabus with headings and bullet points. This prompt clearly defines the task of create a syllabus, the audience, which is a more advanced audience than our previous syllabus, the tone and complexity, which is going to include a description, objectives, outline, and then the format and expectation. It's going to have headings and bullet points. But let's try one more prompting example. For this, we're going to go ahead and ask Copilot to reply to this email. What's one thing you could add to improve this prompt? Go ahead and put your ideas in the chat. Hopefully you're sensing a pattern based on what we've been covering today. It's all going to be around context. In this case, Copilot does have some information. It knows that it's going to make an email, even though that's a little bit vague. It's also going to be able to source a particular email because theoretically replying to this email is going to give it the original email for a little bit of context, but it's not necessarily going to know what you want to go into this response. So you're absolutely right. If we give it a tone or a format, this is going to help it understand where to go. We can also give it some message expectations. What are we trying to say? What's our goal of this message? The persona might be implied, but it's always great to put it in there. It's thinking like me, responding like me. The format and style is going to be that email, but maybe we want to use a particular email as an example. The audience, again, might be implied, might be we're replying to a person, but we can tell Copilot who that person is and what our relationship is to them. Maybe I want to be friendly with this person, or maybe I want to be informal with this person. So giving that tone or context is really going to help it generate a better email. So here's another way you could write that same prompt that's going to give us that better result. Reply to the student email and summarize common strengths and areas for improvement. Use encouraging growth-focused tone, one specific example of strong work and clear next steps that the student can take before the next assignment. This allows Copilot to draft that email for a specific audience with a specific tone and complexity and a specific expectation aligned to it so that it's going to include those strengths and improvement areas. We're going to have a much better email at the end of this prompt. So just to leave you with some tips to try, feel free to ask Copilot these specific examples at the end of your existing prompts. Ask me 5 questions that will improve your response, or give me 2 options. You get 2 for the price of 1. Copilot will give you 2 options instead of 1 response. Show your work, or create an FAQ at the end of this document. You can also have Copilot help you create a prompt. Tell it what you're trying to do, and then ask it to generate a prompt that'll help you create that scenario. Also, you can ask Copilot to ask clarifying questions, or you can turn huge tasks into smaller tasks. Instead of trying to get the perfect response out of Copilot on a very complex, huge task, try breaking it down. Have it do one thing at a time. Again, if you give it information overload, it might pay attention to one aspect over another, giving more weight to an area when you wanted everything to be equally weighted. Break it down into smaller tasks and see how that changes your responses. In conclusion, I want you to know that we have equipped you with some comprehensive understanding of AI tools and practical applications for use and enhance productivity. As we work within the guidelines as set forth by your organization, we're going to be able to embrace these technologies thoughtfully and unlock new opportunities and efficiencies. As an organization, we have helped many people launch Copilot with confidence. So if there's something that our team or planet can do to help you, please feel free to reach out to us. And we'd love to see what options are available. I want to thank you all so much for attending today. I'm just scrolling back through the chat, just making sure there weren't any unresolved questions. I do see one question in the chat. If you do need to hop, you're more than welcome to. We are at the top of the hour, but there is one question. Is there an app or way you can connect Outlook to Copilot so it can draw from that info in the way you can with the chat? You can copy and paste contents from Outlook directly into a chat. You can also open up a chat experience inside of Outlook when you're using the online experience when you're going through the browser. I find that to be a very easy way to do it. I also often will tell Copilot essentially the meat and potatoes of what I'm trying to get it to do, whether that's a copy and paste or whether that is um, just explaining where I'm headed with my particular email request. Great question. All right. I'm not seeing any new questions come in. I hope you all have a wonderful day and we will be back in the future talking about more Copilot opportunities.